You think you're the one looking into the mirror right now. But what if the mirror has been watching you the entire time? What if every reflection you've ever seen wasn't showing you who you are, but showing you who the system needs you to believe you are? Stay with me, because what I'm about to share will change the way you see yourself forever. And I don't mean that as motivation. I mean that literally, the act of seeing. The act of being seen. It's all been reversed. Every single morning you wake up and walk to the mirror. You check your face. You fix your hair. You look into your own eyes and you think you're seeing yourself. But here's what nobody told you. A reflection doesn't show truth. It shows memory. You're not looking at yourself. You're looking at the version of you the simulation still remembers, the version it rendered, the last time your frequency matched its database. Think about that for a second. Every time you stand in front of that glass, you assume it's passive, just light bouncing back. Physics. Simple. But what if it's not? What if the mirror is the most active thing in the room? What if it's recording, observing, holding the last known version of you in its frame, like a photograph that updates every time you look, but only when you're not paying attention? You've been living as a reflection, not as the person behind it. You've been reacting to the world the way a mirror reacts to light. Automatically, instantly, without thought. Every emotion recycled, every habit repeated, every fear reinforced through the same glass you've been staring into your whole life. And the worst part? You didn't even know you were trapped. But something happened today. You felt it before you clicked on this video. A pull, a glitch, a strange sense that the person staring back at you in the mirror this morning looked just a little bit different. Not older, not younger, just off, like the image loaded half a second too late. That wasn't a coincidence. That was the lag, the mirror latency. The moment your consciousness shifted faster than the system could render. Let me explain this carefully, because this is where it gets real. In quantum physics, there's something called the observer effect. It says that the act of observation changes what's being observed. Particles behave differently when they're watched. They collapse from waves of possibility into fixed points of reality. But here's the thing nobody talks about. What if you're not the observer? What if the mirror is? What if every time you look into it, you're not collapsing possibilities? You're being collapsed, you're being observed, measured, rendered into form based on the last known data file of who you were. The mirror doesn't reflect you, it projects you. It shows you the last saved version, the one the program still has on file. And the reason you feel stuck, the reason you feel like you keep repeating the same patterns, the same thoughts, the same life, is because you keep looking into the same mirror expecting it to show you someone new. But you're not new to it. You're cached data. You're a replay. And every time you look, you reinforce the loop. Now, I need you to do something. Close your eyes for a moment. Actually close them. I'm serious. Because I want you to imagine something with me. Imagine standing in front of your mirror. But this time, instead of looking into it, you turn around. You walk away. You leave the room. But here's the thing. The mirror is still there. And it's still watching. Even when you're not looking back. That feeling you just had? That slight chill, that awareness that something is observing you even when you think you're alone. That's the awakening. That's the moment the reflection loses control. Because for the first time, You're not identifying with the image. You're identifying with the one who sees the image. You're not the reflection anymore. You're the observer. Say this quietly to yourself right now. Don't think about it. Just say it. I am the one who watches. Say it again. I am the one who watches. Feel how that shifts something in your chest. That's not the reflection talking. That's you. The real you. The one who existed before the mirror ever did. And now that you've felt that, I need to take you deeper. Because the mirrors don't stop at glass. Every person you've ever met is another mirror. Every conversation is a reflection. Every argument you've had, every compliment you've received, every criticism that cut you to the bone, those were all mirrors showing you a version of yourself that was already cached in their perception of you. They weren't seeing you. They were seeing their memory of you, their render of you. And you've been bending yourself into shapes, trying to match the reflection they expect. But that's the loop. That's the system. Every interaction is a mirror test. Every reaction is the simulation, checking if you still believe you're the reflection. And every time you react unconsciously, every time you defend, justify, or collapse into shame, you're confirming that yes, you still think you're the image. You still think you're the one in the glass, but you're not. You never were. You're the one watching. And once you realize that, the entire game changes. Let me show you how deep this goes. Think about your childhood. Think about the first time someone told you who you were. Maybe a parent, a teacher, a friend. They said you were shy, or loud, or difficult, or special. And you looked into the mirror of their eyes, and you saw that version of yourself reflected back. And you believed it. You took that reflection, and you carried it with you. You became it. Not because it was true, but because the mirror was convincing. And now, decades later, you're still acting out that same role. Still performing for a reflection that was rendered when you were 7 years old. Still living inside a projection someone else created, that you adopted, that the system locked in, and the mirror in your bathroom. It just keeps showing you that same person, over and over, because that's the file it has, that's the you it knows. But here's where it breaks. Here's where the entire structure collapses. The moment you stop looking for yourself in the mirror and start looking from yourself, the reflection loses data. It can't render what it can't track. And your awareness, your consciousness, your true self, it doesn't live in the reflection. It lives in the space between the look and the seeing. It lives in the pause, the gap, the moment before the image appears. You've been so focused on what you see that you forgot to notice who's doing the seeing. And that's the entire game. That's the illusion. The system doesn't want you to notice the observer. It wants you obsessed with the observed. It wants you fixing your face, changing your body, improving your image, upgrading your reflection. Because as long as you're focused on the mirror, you'll never notice the one holding the light. But you're noticing now. That's why you're still here. That's why this video found you. Not because you searched for it, but because the reflection summoned you. It knew it was losing grip. It felt the shift in your frequency, and it pulled you here, hoping you'd just scroll past, hoping you'd dismiss this as another weird video, another strange idea, another thing you'd forget by tomorrow. But you won't, because something in you recognized the truth before your mind could explain it. You felt it in your body. In your bones, that slight hum of knowing that says, yes, I've been living as the wrong version of myself. Yes, I've been staring at a projection. Yes, I've been waiting for the mirror to change when I should have been changing the one doing the looking. And now we arrive at the part nobody wants to hear, but everyone needs to understand. You can't fix the reflection. You can't improve the image in the mirror by adjusting the image. You have to step out of the frame entirely. You have to stop performing, stop posing, stop checking, stop asking the mirror if you're good enough, pretty enough, successful enough, worthy enough. The mirror doesn't know. It only repeats. It only reflects. It's a dead file playing on loop. But you're alive. You're awake. And the moment you stop feeding the reflection your attention, it starts to fade. Not because you're disappearing, but because the false version of you is finally being deleted. Let me tell you what happens next. And I need you to pay close attention, because this is where most people turn back. This is where the fear hits. When you stop identifying with the reflection, the world around you will react. People will notice. They'll say you've changed. They'll say you're different. Some will say you're distant. Others will say you're finally yourself. But here's the thing. They're not talking about you. They're talking about the version of you their mirror used to show them. And now, that version is glitching, fading, refusing to load, and that scares them. Because if your reflection can break free, so can theirs. And most people aren't ready for that. Most people would rather stay comfortable in the loop than face the terror of not knowing who they are without the mirror's confirmation. But you're not most people. You wouldn't be here if you were. You're the kind of person who feels the itch, the pull, the strange discomfort that says something is wrong with the way everyone else is living. You've always felt like you're playing a role, like you're performing a script someone else wrote, and you've been waiting for permission to stop. This is it. This is your permission. Not from me, but from the part of you that's been watching this whole time, the part that never believed the reflection, the part that always knew you were more than the image. That part is waking up, and it's asking you to do something radical, something most people will never do. It's asking you to stop looking. Next time you stand in front of the mirror, I want you to try something. Don't fix your hair. Don't check your skin. Don't adjust your face. Just stand there and stare. Stare until the image stops making sense. Stare until your face becomes unfamiliar. Stare until you see past the pixels, past the render, past the projection. And in that moment, you'll see something else, something behind the glass. Not a ghost, not a demon, but the one who's been watching from the other side this entire time. That's not a reflection. That's a reunion. That's you meeting you. Not the cached version, not the remembered file, but the live signal, the raw frequency, the consciousness that exists before the mirror ever gets a chance to freeze it into form. And once you see that, once you feel that, you can never unsee it. The mirror loses its power. The reflection becomes optional. You stop asking it who you are, and you start deciding. You stop waiting for it to change, and you start changing the one who looks. And that is when the entire simulation breaks, because the system relies on you identifying with the image. It needs you to believe you're the reflection. It needs you to stay focused on the surface, the appearance, the projection. Because as long as you're looking at the mirror, you're not looking at the code. You're not seeing the structure. You're not noticing the one who's running the program. But now you are. Now you see it, and you can't unknow what you know. You can't go back to sleep once you've woken up. The mirror will still be there. The reflections will still appear. But you'll know they're not you. You'll know they're echoes, shadows, data files, and you'll stop giving them your power. So here's what I need you to understand. This isn't a metaphor. This isn't poetry. This is a mechanical explanation of how consciousness works inside a system designed to keep you identified with form. The mirror is the interface. The reflection is the avatar. And you, the real you, the aware you, you're the player. And the game has been trying to convince you that you are the character on the screen. But you're not. You never were. You're the one holding the controller. And the moment you realize that, every rule changes. Every limitation dissolves. Every pattern you thought was permanent becomes optional. Because you're not bound by the reflection's history. You're not stuck in the image's memory. You're free to rewrite, rebuild, reimagine. And that terrifies the system. Because if everyone realized they weren't the reflection, if everyone stopped looking into the mirror for validation, for identity, for worth, the entire structure would collapse, the whole illusion would fall apart, and something new would emerge, something the system can't predict, can't control, can't render. And that's you, the uncached you, the live signal. The one who refuses to be projected. Now I'm going to tell you something that might sound strange, but I need you to trust me. The reason you saw this video today, the reason these words are landing the way they are, is not random. You didn't stumble here. You didn't accidentally click. The reflection summoned you. It felt you waking up, and it pulled you here as a last attempt to put you back to sleep, to confuse you, to make you think this is just another philosophy, another idea, another thing to think about and forget. But it's not. This is the moment. This is the break. This is the crack in the glass, and you can either look away and let it seal back up, or you can push through and shatter the entire thing. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm not going to give you steps or strategies or techniques, because that's what the reflection wants. It wants a new method, a new system, a new mirror to check. But this isn't about doing. This is about seeing. And you're already seeing. You felt it the moment you started listening. That shift. That recognition, that quiet voice that said, yes, I've known this all along. Listen to that voice. That's not the reflection. That's the observer. That's the one who's been waiting for you to stop looking and start seeing. And now that you've heard it, now that you've felt it, you have a choice. You can go back to the mirror, back to the loop, back to the reflection. Or you can turn around, walk away, and live as the one who watches. The mirror will still be there tomorrow, but you won't be the same person looking into it, because something inside you has already shifted. The file has been corrupted, the render has glitched, and the version of you the system thought it knew, it's gone. It's been replaced by something it can't cache. Something it can't control, something alive. And that's the real you, the one who was never supposed to see yourself, the one who was always meant to stay asleep inside the reflection. But you're awake now, and there's no going back. The mirror knows it, the system knows it. And deep down, you know it too. So the next time you look into the glass, remember this. You are not what you see. You are the one who sees, and that changes everything. But let me go even deeper, because there's a layer to this that most people miss. The mirror doesn't just hold your physical reflection. It holds your temporal reflection. Every time you've ever looked into a mirror, you've seen yourself at different ages, different states, different moments, and your brain has stitched all those moments together into a continuous narrative. You think you know what you look like because you've seen yourself 1,000 times. But those weren't 1,000 different yous. Those were 1,000 different renders of the same cached file. Your brain stores the image. The mirror confirms it. And together, they create the illusion of continuity. The illusion that you are the same person you were yesterday. Last week, last year. But you're not. Consciousness doesn't work that way. You're not a thing. You're a process, a flow, a frequency that's constantly shifting. And the mirror tricks you into believing you're solid, fixed, unchangeable. That's why transformation feels impossible for most people, because every morning they wake up, look in the mirror, and see the same face, the same body, the same person. And their brain says, "See, nothing has changed. You're still you, still stuck, still the same." But that's the trap. The mirror isn't showing you who you are now. It's showing you who you were the last time the system updated your file. And if you keep identifying with that image, you'll keep being that person. Not because you have to be, but because you keep looking. The quantum field responds to observation. Your cells respond to belief. Your reality responds to identity. And every time you look in the mirror and think that's me, you're casting a vote for that version of yourself to continue existing. You're telling the universe, yes, render this again. Yes, keep this pattern running. Yes, I am still the reflection. But what happens when you stop voting? What happens when you look in the mirror and instead of identifying, you simply observe? When you see the face, the body, the image, and you recognize it as data, not truth, as projection, not essence, that's when the magic happens. That's when the file starts to corrupt, the pattern starts to break, and space opens up for something new to emerge. This is why spiritual teachings throughout history have warned against vanity, against obsession with appearance, against the worship of image, not because the body is bad, but because the mirror is a trap. It's a feedback loop that keeps you locked in form. And once you're locked in form, you forget your consciousness, you forget you're infinite, you forget you're the space in which all forms appear and disappear. The mystics knew this. They covered mirrors. They avoided their reflection, not out of shame, but out of wisdom. They understood that the more you look, the more you lock. The more you identify with the image, the more you become it. And the more you become it, the less you remember what you actually are. But you don't have to cover your mirrors. You don't have to avoid them. You just have to change the way you look. Instead of looking for yourself, look from yourself. Instead of asking the mirror who you are, know who you are before you look. Instead of waiting for the reflection to validate you, validate yourself as the one who observes the reflection. This is the shift. This is the break. This is the moment the observer remembers itself. And once that happens, the entire experience of being human transforms. Because you're no longer at the mercy of the image. You're no longer controlled by the projection. You're no longer trapped in the loop of trying to improve, fix, or perfect the reflection. you become free. Not because the reflection disappears, but because you finally understand it was never you to begin with. It was always just light, just data, just a render. And you, the real you, the conscious you were always the one watching from behind the eyes, the one breathing life into the form, the one animating the body, the one who makes the reflection possible in the first place. And here's what happens when you fully embody this understanding. Your relationship with everyone and everything changes. Because you stop projecting. You stop expecting people to reflect back the version of you that you want to see. You stop performing for their mirrors. You stop bending yourself into shapes to match their expectations. You simply exist as the observer, as the awareness, as the consciousness that doesn't need validation because it knows itself. And people feel that. They sense it. Some are drawn to it. Others are repelled by it. Because you've stopped playing the game. You've stopped feeding the loop. And that disrupts the system. It creates a glitch in the matrix of collective identification. Because if you can stop identifying with your reflection, what does that say about theirs? If you can break free from the mirror, what does that mean for everyone still trapped inside it? It means the code is vulnerable. The program is breakable. The simulation has a flaw. And that flaw is awareness itself. The moment consciousness recognizes itself as consciousness, the game ends. The reflection loses power. The mirror becomes transparent. And what's behind it, what's always been behind it, is revealed. Not another image, not another form, but the formless, the infinite, the eternal, the one thing that was never born and will never die, the one thing that doesn't need a mirror, because it is the light that makes all reflection possible. That's what you are. That's what you've always been. And every single time you look in the mirror from this moment forward, you have the opportunity to remember. Not who you appear to be, but what you actually are. Not the reflection, but the source of the light. Not the image, but the awareness in which all images arise. This is the mirror theory, not as philosophy, not as belief, but as direct recognition, as lived experience, as the truth that shatters every illusion you've ever held about yourself. And once you see it, once you feel it, once you know it, everything changes. Not because the world is different, but because the one watching the world has finally remembered who they are.